Welcome to the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
For so many mobile app developers, it's an all-or-nothing battle out there in the App Store.
This App in Top podcast is your mobile app marketing advantage.
Let's get that new app of yours moving to the top.
This is the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
And now your host, Michael Bauer.
Welcome. This is the App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast produced by appintop.com. You can find our daily blog at blog.appintop.com. Track us down on Facebook, facebook.com/appintop. We tweet, we hope you do too, and then you're following us on Twitter at appintop_com. That's appintop_com. WildTangent is a mobile games network that has nearly 27 million monthly active users. Let that number sink in for just a second. 27 million monthly active users. In April, WildTangent was named the #1 mobile gaming network in the U.S. by comScore. Today, we invite Matt Shea, Vice President of Product and Technology and the head of studio at WildTangent, to talk about how to market and monetize free-to-play games on WildTangent Mobile Gaming Network. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about WildTangent. Again, that number, staggering. You have nearly 27 million monthly active players, making it the largest gaming audience in the U.S., ahead of Zynga and Electronic Arts. Take that one, Madden. One of the games you host is Fruit Ninja. Are these predominantly Android users we're talking about with that 27 million?
So, yeah, when we talk about that network number, that's composed from comScore. That's composed of two major components. One is our media network, of which we have a variety of partners that we work with, and it also includes our distribution network, which is the WildTangent game service. The media network is composed of Android and iOS and platforms like that, and the distribution service of WildTangent games is exclusively on the mobile side for Android users.
Now, how can a mobile game developer reach your audience?
It's really easy. We're easy to work with. We're looking to work with game developers, and we do from around the world. We have hundreds of games on the mobile side. We have thousands of games on the PC side. So it's real easy. Just go to our website and contact us. We have a content acquisition team that will work with you, bring your game on board, and get your game in front of our users. So
give me an example then. If I'm creating a game, how do you select games for your network? Is there a lot of times when I've worked in radio in the past that you sit down in meetings and you discuss what songs you're going to add? Do you guys have those kinds of discussions to selecting a game?
Well, it's kind of a two-way street. Obviously we know what our users like and what they're looking for, but also we're very cognizant that the games industry, there's a lot of innovation going on out there, and that developers are always coming out with something new. So we really just pick great games. We're looking to work with guys from two guys in a shop to large companies that build great games, and just bring them to our users.
When a game is selected, how does it get featured within WildTangent?
It's a great question because the reason why you have to ask that is that it's different out there in an app store world for mobile than it has been in the past. And so for us, we're very, very transparent. We work with developers and say, hey, look, we're going to bring your game to our users. We're going to go ahead and feature it on the website and work with them with regards to a release date. And that's one of the great things about being a game service and focused exclusively at that on the WildTangent game side. I think what you find is developers go out there and work with app stores, and you kind of publish and pray, put something out there, and maybe you'll get featured, maybe you won't, maybe you get the impression that you will and you don't, and it can be a very, very frustrating experience. And so for us, we're very transparent in working with developers and getting them onto our network.
And as you know, with those other app stores out there, developers can pay for a premium placement. Do you guys have that as well?
We have options for developers if they'd like to pay for advertising in addition, above and beyond, editorial placement and normal placement.
Can you give me an example of one game that you guys recently have worked with that you've seen skyrocket? Maybe you weren't prepared for that level, or you were shocked by it as well, that you've seen sort of skyrocket within WildTangent?
Yeah, I mean, we've found that we've had partners work with us like Clash of Clans and Fruit Ninja. Obviously, we have our own games like Polar Bowler, and we have some new games coming out soon like Swipe 3 and Poker Play. It really does depend on the individual user. For us, given that we have all the demographics in the household, we usually find that end users find a game that they like.
Is there a particular type of game that seems to be popping right now?
There's definitely some interesting genres out there. One of the newer ones is the incremental genre, which is we have a title called Swipe the Golden, and so we were surprised and very happy to see consumers play that game, retain that game, and then actually go ahead and monetize in that game.
Now, when you talk about how you guys develop your own games, let's talk about the free-to-play business model. What are the prerequisites for this model to work? What are people prepared to pay for?
Well, it's a great question. Obviously, there's a lot of focus on the free-to-play space, and both what's working and how to innovate and how to push the techniques forward and make things more the norm for consumers. Free to play. One of the reasons why it's taking off so much is that the customer acquisition costs, if you look at it from a broad perspective, are just so much much more economical. You're looking at about a tenth the cost out there on the big bad internet in order to get free to play users versus SRP. Also, the scale of users available to you. The addressable market is a lot bigger, anywhere from 10 to 100x, depending on what you're looking at. What's working in game? I think the types of components that work well are ones where users are focusing on either some type of collectible aspect. If you're talking about maybe a card game or kind of the match 3 RPG titles, capabilities. If you're talking about more of the real-time strategy approach, where you're trying to build up units, obviously things that are power-ups are the equivalent that you see in some of the more casual match 3 titles, where maybe you're removing some elements from a match 3 board. So I mean, it really does depend in both the genre and the demographic. But ultimately, what does it take to be successful in free to play? It starts with building a great game, building a game that people will stay in and want to play more.
All right, in fact, let's talk a little bit more about that. We're going to take a quick break here. Right around the corner, the relevance of the WildTangent patented business model of playing premium games for free with our Vice President of Product and Technology and the head of the studio, Matt Shea, in seconds here on the App and Top podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from App and Top, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This is the App and Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast. I'm Mike Bauer. Founded in 1998 as video game publisher, WildTangent launched its Android app in 2013, which has been pre-installed by carriers such as AT&T and device manufacturers. Now, WildTangent, the app is available on nearly 100 mobile devices and offers access to over 450 in-house and third-party mobile games. We're speaking with Matt Shea, Vice President of Product and Technology and the head of studio at WildTangent. So, Matt, WildTangent has that patented business model where users can play premium games for free, monetized through ads. Is it still relevant for the mobile games where most of the games are free to play?
Well, it's a great question. Obviously, there is a difference in how you go about monetizing a title that's normally SRP versus free to play. The patented business model that you're referring to is part of our WildCoins offering, which is a digital currency offering. And when we came up with that, we actually had free-to-play games in mind when we did that. From our perspective,
from the get-go, you thought about that going into it.
We saw what was going on in the Asian market with regards to free-to-play, and we saw where things could go in the North American market. And at the time, the content that we were able to source was overwhelmingly SRP titles on the downloadable side, and then that transitioned through with regards to MMO titles online, then into social titles on Facebook, and then ultimately where we land now, which is mobile titles, which has historically been a split, but obviously the majority of growth with regards to content is on the free to play side. From our perspective, we don't see a difference. We are indifferent about a title with regards to access, which is SRP. The value is around accessing the title. It's the difference between owning a DVD or renting a DVD. At the end of the day, it's the same content, but it's a different business model. But when you look at it from a free-to-play perspective, as it says right there in the title, it's free to access. And so the value of what the developer has built is something in-game, whether it's additional content, additional features, whatever it may be. And so the aspect of saying, normally you would have to pay to own this thing, and we can give you some digital currency in order to get access or bring an advertiser in, is still relevant in that world.
Which ones generate more revenue per user in regards to the split between the free ad and the ad-supported games, the free-to-play games?
It's definitely going in the direction of free-to-play, for a variety of reasons. One, the downward pressure of pricing with regards to SRP to push everything down towards that 99-cent price point. I think that we're going to see prices go back up just, again, due to that customer acquisition cost. But also as free-to-play titles get better and better, with regards to retaining users and monetizing users, we're going to see that revenue per user go up on the free-to-play side.
He is Matt Shea, Vice President of Product Technology and the head of studio at WildTangent. How do you compare the mobile game market with the console and PC games? Earlier, I sort of said, hey, take that, Madden. But literally, how do you compare the mobile game market with console? And isn't the PC games maybe a little easier to monetize?
It's a great question. One of the ways that we look at it is the console and PC game market is kind of like the movie market, and the mobile market is kind of like the TV space.
Okay.
And so when you look at console and PC games, it's a very large investment in order to have a massive launch, trying to get all the money from pre-orders and sales in the first weekend, and then do it again for a sequel in 18 to 24 months. And that takes a tremendous amount of investment. And it's always fun to talk about Title X or Title Y that has broken some entertainment revenue record. But obviously, there's a very, very large number of titles that get nowhere near those numbers that have been a significant investment in order to bring to market. When you look at the mobile space, one of the reasons why we compare it to TV is that the level of engagement, or at least the cadence of engagement with consumers is different. It's not sitting down for that 2-hour experience in front of your TV or your PC. It's more about interacting with the title, a few minutes here, a few minutes there throughout the day, and it's about expanding that title into kind of that season after season, episode after episode model like TV. So they are different. We're still talking about games at the end of the day, and both have their challenges. But they are focusing on how we bring things to market, and the level of investment that you make in games out of the gate are pretty different.
Sitting down for 2 hours in front of a TV, I call that a rookie. Now, but here's a big question, though. In regards to that, why go mobile when there's so many users? Again, like the TV kind of analogy that you're using here, so many users, but only a few are spending any of the money. Why go that direction? I mean, is the engagement level that high?
Well, when you look at mobile, there's no question that we're still going to have more and more mobile devices get into end users' hands. We're still going to have devices that are going to be in their pocket throughout the day. There's still a lot of room for growth. If you look at it at the PC and console space, there's a little bit of a head scratching about, are we going to continue to see more and more people go into that space, and what type of content makes sense for them? And if you look at the casual space, which was predominantly on the PC side, and how it shifted to mobile, and how that demographic has become more and more comfortable playing on tablets and smartphones. If you look at the demographic that is currently underneath the quote unquote core gamer on the console side, that age group is definitely much more comfortable playing on their hand-me-down phones or their hand-me-down tablets, and so eventually that's going to sandwich both of them. So we definitely feel that the future of mobile games is very bright. The other aspect of what you're talking about, and why again TV is not a bad analogy for this, is bringing in advertising with regards to monetization. And so not just focusing on consumer conversion, but also focusing on how do you bring in advertisers the right way. And that's something that we've had a tremendous amount of experience with. We have a product called Brand Boost that brings that into both free-to-play titles and others. And has been very, very successful, not only in helping developers monetize, but also showing that once end users get a sense of the value that's in a game from that in-game item or currency or what have you that they got for free from an advertiser on our brand boost platform, they actually will increase in conversion from that point on. So it's a nice bridge between monetizing now and creating paying customers in the future.
Well, and it also hits me as with the mobile aspect of it, not only between social media and the mobile, do you have the network that people like Microsoft and Sony were trying to create with, letting opponents play each other over a long distance through their network? You've got that built right into the phone. It's already there.
Exactly. It's a communication platform from the get-go.
Are we going to see, I know that sometimes I'll see somebody walking around with a T-shirt with the old school Nintendo game, the actual controller on it, and I think to myself, is my daughter, who's 7 now, is she going to be walking around with just an iPhone on her shirt going forward?
I definitely think that's the case. I mean, I have kids, young kids, and they definitely play on their smartphones and tablets rather than on their handheld consoles or their consoles connected to the TV.
Yeah, 100%. Now, let's talk about product planning in games. How does the game genre, the settings, gameplay, affect whether or not free-to-play will work? What else is important for the success of a game like that?
Well, I think you absolutely need to understand who you want to play this game. Who do you want to put this game into their hands and then focus on monetization. You have to understand the audience, and the genre and the setting definitely go into what's going to be more amenable to that audience. And so that's something that you have to do from the beginning. You can have great game mechanics that maybe are mass market in that regards. But once you start talking about setting and genre, you definitely have to sit down and say, this demographic is more interested in this area, or maybe vice versa. This is a known situation where maybe it's not a welcome demographic, not welcome to this demographic. So, that's where I would start with regards to product planning, is just understanding who the audience is. And free to play, what techniques work? Are you talking about pay to win? Does that work? Are you talking about more about vanity items? Are you talking about more about buying something that's on the collection front? I think those things definitely align, or at least skew towards the audience that you're trying to make the game for.
Can you do you have an example that you can use in regards to that product planning? Because I know we've talked a little bit here on the podcast about making sure that from the get-go you've figured out who your target audience is, in addition to having this incredible game that you've come up with, who that target audience is. Can you tell us something that you've seen that may be an example of something to either focus on, make sure you focus on, that is not happening enough, or something to avoid in regards to those product plannings?
Yeah, I think we've made some games in the past where we had some fantastic game elements, and then we went with a little bit more of a mass market genre, and I think we would have found more success if we would have skewed in one direction. So, for example, if you're making a word game, taking that in mind of who the audience is, and there's a lot of data out there that will help support what's going on in that space. Obviously, there's always room for innovation and improvement and taking risks. But in general, I think there's something to be said about understanding what those demographics are looking for.
Let's talk about how not to go overboard with free-to-play monetization. Are there elegant solutions, skill-based wagering, real money gambling business models that you guys are looking at?
Well, we're definitely keeping an eye on all aspects of business models, both domestically and globally, and obviously, gambling is a big conversation that's occurring out there. Mm-hmm. We happen to have a game called Poker Play that's coming out soon, and it's not a real world gambling game by any stretch, but it's definitely an entry into our take on how people can enjoy playing games like poker in a different way than they would otherwise. How not to go overboard on free to play. I think the biggest part of that and the biggest challenge about being successful in free to play is user retention. Right? If you look at the console and PC game experience, as you said, 2 hours that's a cute start.
Right.
But,
right.
But if you think about it, you're sitting down and you're having something take over the screen, and the steps to actually move between games, or at least the nature of how you move between games, is not the most frictionless thing on the planet. It really is meant to be you sit down and you're playing this thing. And if you look at it from a mobile experience on your smartphone or tablet, that other app, that other game, that Facebook post, that is SMS message that you got, that you want to make a move in this game, is just one button behind everything that you're playing. So the nature of how to keep people focused on your game is really the trick. So if you have user retention in your title, instead of it being a circus barker that's on the street yelling at you, going buy, 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 with very, very aggressive upsell, it becomes more of a conversation of which the consumer, on their own cadence, can make a decision to go in and maybe buy something that they were looking to get. Maybe it's a vanity item that they'd like to customize, what's going on in the game. Maybe it's a feature they'd like. Maybe it's some additional content. But I think that's really the difference. If you have a title that users are comfortable spending time in, then it's more of a conversation than it is about a forced upsell.
That's a great way to put it. I was just thinking about that as well. It's like it fits the conversation. It's not all of a sudden, here comes this guy yelling and screaming at you about buy, buy, buy in the middle of something you weren't prepared for. It's literally a part of the conversation that you may be having while you're playing.
Exactly.
Can you rank important success factors of free-to-play games? Maybe the user retention, social factors, monetization. Where do you see some of the important, and rank those for us, success factors?
Yeah, you bet. I mean, as I mentioned before, user retention for us is number one.
Yeah.
Because that gives you the ability to not only put products out there to see if people like them, but also allows you to improve products, continue to give consumers something new. Social features, social factors are important. They definitely contribute on the reduction of customer acquisition costs for something that's a multiplayer game that is de facto the game. But in general, retention is key. And then, of course, monetization is the layer that you put on top of both of those. If you have a title that monetizes incredibly well, but you don't retain users long enough, then you're leaving a lot of the opportunity on the table.
So without giving away the shop, what are those key metrics for WildTangent?
Well, we definitely see being a game service, being something that is not just an individual game, definitely benefits us with regards to user retention. We see a very large factor above what a game itself on average would be able to do with regards to retention. And that not only just benefits us and makes us happy, but it makes us more successful for our partners when they give us a game, because we can move that audience into their title when we launch it, when they become part of the catalog, and when they update the game. So, all parties benefit by having a dedicated game service like WildTangent Games.
Now, for you as well, what's the difference between online and mobile, considering that your games are published mainly on the Android platform?
I think, mobile has that different usage pattern. It has the, they come in for a couple of minutes and then they go away because they're doing something throughout the day. Whereas online, again, is very similar to that PC where they sit down and they engage for a while, and then when they're done, they're done. So yeah, we've definitely noticed that the usage pattern is different on the mobile side.
How can you use 95% of free users in free-to-play? Are there any interesting solutions?
For us, one of the things that we built was something I mentioned earlier called Brand Boost. And really the idea here is that if you're making a free-to-play title, and on average, as you highlight here, you have kind of that 90x percent of users that maybe haven't converted or won't convert. And there's all this value that you've created. And to some extent, the utilization of that value contributes toward that user retention. So for us, the Brand Boost product and advertising becomes an example of that. Obviously, if you can get something where a brand advertiser comes in, and we work with many of them, and an example of one of our partners would be Ludia with Family Feud, where they integrated Brand Boost. You can bring in an advertiser, and instead of it being forced on the user, it's more of an invitation on the side saying, hey, would you like to get another free item? Would you like to get some free currency? Would you like to get this thing that normally you'd have to pay 99 cents for? Right. And then they say, yeah, that sounds good. You go in, you watch the ad. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You just have to watch the advertiser's message. And then at the end, the system very securely says, great, gives them the item. And as I mentioned earlier, we've seen that consumers that participate in that experience eventually do convert at a higher rate towards purchase. So we can actually move the needle on the purchaser front. But in general, using advertising in the right way is a great way in order to monetize that 95%. And there's definitely a lot of room to grow in that space. It's very exciting for us. We definitely think that there's going to be an increase in mobile ad spends. So that's something that we're looking forward to.
Matt, take a quick sip of water. We'll be right back. We'll find out, do the rules applying to Europe's free-to-play, really free-to-win, look like they'll take hold in the U.S., and how free-to-play games are going to evolve moving forward. We're hoping Matt Shea, Vice President of Product and Technology and head of the studio at WildTangent, has some answers coming for us in seconds here on the App and Top podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from App and Top, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This is indeed the App and Top mobile app marketing podcast. I'm Michael Bauer, your host. We would love to hear from you, so please send us your comments via Facebook at facebook.com/appandtop, or tweet us your questions, your thoughts, your additional comments at appandtop_com. That's appandtop_com. Today we've been joined by Matt Shea, Vice President of Product and Technology and the head of studio at WildTangent, to talk about how to market and monetize free-to-play games on WildTangent mobile gaming network. Now, Matt, as we know in Europe, there are new regulations about nominally free-to-play, but really pay-to-win games. Do you see legislation developing in that direction here in the U.S. as well?
Well, from our perspective, we hope it's not needed. In general, a lot of these things stem from, a very, very small subset of the development community that finds some type of exploit, and then, is creating a situation where consumers are either being charged when they didn't intend to, or maybe they're taking advantage of the ability of kids to pay when they shouldn't. So from our perspective, we definitely hope that the industry and the community finds tools that it's not needed.
How do you limit the free-to-play game developers, and how best to address those limitations?
Well, I think when you use the term limit, from a distributor and a publisher perspective. Really, our job is just to make sure that when the consumer is signaling that they'd like to have a purchase, that's both a secure and authorized purchase.
Yes.
And so that's really on us. From a developer perspective, their job is to create a great game that consumers are looking to spend time and they'd like to spend some money. That we make sure that we do that authorized transaction. So I think both sides can work together to make sure that there isn't anything that we're running afoul of the end user.
Is there a way to increase an average revenue per user in a free-to-play game?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that if you're keeping users around, then they're looking to have more from your game, okay, whatever it may be. And so if you can keep a user another couple of weeks, another couple of months, and give them more features, more content, whatever makes sense, that's the best way in order to have them spend more time with your title, be delighted with your title, and then ultimately spend more money with your title.
So if you've got them locked in, then you should be able to get, say, an additional $10, $20, $30. I mean, there's those that pay $1,000, but how do you persuade everyone to pay just a little bit more?
Well, I think it goes back to if they're having if they're enjoying the title, if they're part of a community that plays that title, over time, whether it's them, maybe buying it more with an in-app purchase, or whether it's using an advertising product like Brand Boost, then that's ultimately where more time spent is going to equal more dollars that go into the developer's pocket to keep making great games.
The industry players share with us that very few games have an LTV of more than $1.50, $2 on average. What is this metric at WildTangent Mobile Game Network?
Well, that's a very, very direct question. What we found working with our partners is that having a dedicated game service definitely results in a more qualified, consumer, and definitely better results than the industry norm that they see on our network.
Okay. How much is the game developer likely to keep?
Yeah, we work with developers on very, very competitive rates with regards to markets. So yeah, we're looking to make sure that the developers are very successful. We know that they make content, and it's our job to bring that great content to consumers. So we're definitely look out for the developers' benefit, and we're very competitive from a market perspective.
Taking a look at your audience, you've reached the audience a little over a year. What role did the carriers and manufacturers play in bringing the users to the WildTangent app?
Yeah, no. One of the great things that we've been able to build over the last couple of years are those relationships that you just outlined with partners like AT&T and Sony and Asus and Acer and others. And the Android app is something that is installed on over 100 different devices that those partners that we work with. Mm-hmm. And so we're very excited in order to be able to bring the service to them, and they play a big part of that.
And then they also then, as far as bringing the users to that app, like you saw a dramatic increase by the preloads there.
Yeah, there's definitely having a great experience, out of the box with
literally
the game service.
Yeah,
literally out of the box.
Yes.
This is one of those cases where it's not figuratively,
right.
Literally out of the box, where there's a game service ready to go. And has games for the end user, makes it easier for them to find games than they would in a given app store. And we found success with that model.
All right, so let's ask a couple of questions here before we wrap things up. Expansion plans for the near future. Tell me where you see WildTangent in, say, the next 365 days, and then where you see WildTangent in the next 2 years.
Well, I think expansion for us is getting more end users into our service. We're building more and more partnerships, both on the carrier and OEM side, and then also on the game developer side, bringing more content to end users. And on the studio, continue to make great games. We have Swipe 3 is a game that's coming out shortly. Poker Play is another game that's coming out shortly. We have a game that we released just a couple weeks ago called Swipe the Gold, and then we also have our perennial titles like Polar Bowler and Word Science. So, we're definitely very excited to continue to bring, new products out for consumers. And over the next year or two, we're looking to be one of the bigger distribution networks for developers, looking to be the biggest network for brand advertisers in order to work with, and looking to be one of the studios that builds the best games out there.
All right, Matt, I want to find out from you before we get to the last question about what you see in the future. What's the one game, like right now, if I was hovering over your shoulder as you were sitting in your office, in your car, you're playing a game, what's the most recent game that you found yourself locked into that you've gotten through WildTangent? What's the number one game that you find yourself addicted to right now?
It's going to sound like a cliche, but it's the new titles that we're releasing. It's Swipe 3. Which is this great puzzle game that's coming out. I think everyone's going to like it. And Poker Play, which is this match 3 meets poker cards. And so those are the titles that I'm excited about the most from WildTangent Games Network. If you're asking from a third-party developer perspective, then I think Hearthstone is an example of something that I find really interesting.
All right, let's take a look at the overall future. How do you think free-to-play games evolve here going forward? What's the next step, and what's something that you want to see happen in the evolution of free-to-play games?
Well, I think what we're going to find is that the free-to-play moniker will progressively go away, and it will just become games. I mean, most people forget that the free-to-play model, if you will, has been around since the beginning, when we all walked up to coin-op arcades and put quarters into them. Right? Mm-hmm. We didn't own the game; we were just paying for something to do in the game. So I think that's the aspect. I think where we go from an evolution perspective. I think since it becomes more the norm, it becomes more of that conversation with end users. And I think there's still a lot of innovation, both that we see and also that we'll discover that we can do in the industry.
All right, Matt. Well, listen, for the past 30 minutes, you've explained how to market and monetize free-to-play games. You've taken us inside the mobile gaming network. You've given us things to look forward to, including possibly losing the moniker free-to-play as far as the games are concerned. Matt, thank you so much for your time, sir. You are now officially free to go.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
And to all of you, thank you so much for listening. This has been the App and Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast. Make sure you visit our daily blog, blog.appandtop.com. where you can find all this great information and much, much more every single day. So until next time, I'm Mike Bauer. See ya.
The App in Top Mobile App Marketing Podcast is produced by
appintop.com.